Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning for everyone who's watching.
You ain't gonna say good night, dang.
Good evening. What? What up? What up? What up? What up? What up?
What's going on with you, man?
Hey, nothing much, man. Welcome everybody to another episode. We are glad that you guys are here. Always remember, please like, comment, subscribe. But this episode is a very special one. As I say, almost for every episode, I think every episode holds a special value. But I think this one has a lot of value. We're going to be talking to a veteran, a pro bodybuilder, a promoter, a man behind the scenes that does a lot of different things.
Head
Yes,
judge.
head judge,
and
polygraph,
in charge of the judging for the Yorton, like a lot of hats he wear too.
a lot of hats, and also, I mean, the one thing that a lot of athletes can value, right, is 40 years of competition history, right? That's a long
Right.
time. He has seen bodybuilding span across decades and years. So a lot of people may have heard his voice um or competed at a show that he judged. So I will show you a few photos and see if you can recognize this man. So maybe this one or this one. I don't recognize this one yet. So we got this one. There we
Okay.
go.
Now we know who it is. We
And
definitely know who
lastly,
it is.
we have the host of the Zen of Bodybuilding, Sully, coming to the stage. How's it going?
Gentlemen, thank you. How are you all doing today?
Good, can't
You're good.
complain.
This is like awesome, man. I feel like I'm at the Yorton Cup. I'm about to get you guys to like take your shirts off so I can keep saying quarter turn to the right.
Well, you judged both of us, I think in both categories. So I think, well, you judged me in both categories. But I promise you, as long as it's me and him now, I'll stand my men's physique turn.
And as long as it's you and him, I'm staying retired.
Oh man.
So, if you don't mind, can you give us? I tried to do everyone justice with their intros, but can you give us? Can you kind of fill in the blurts that I may have missed about you, and maybe even what you do with the OCB?
Sure. I'm just going to give just a quick synopsis. I discovered bodybuilding in 1979. I was a wayward youth living in Columbus, Ohio. Substance abuse family. Just my mom and I, just the whole typical. You are on your way down the slider kind of a lifestyle. And I had just popped into a health food store, and there was this guy, this big Austrian dude named Arnold something or other, that was giving a seminar. Long story short, he floated me two tickets to the Mr. Olympia. I watched Frank Zane win the first Mr. Olympia. And in talking with the bodybuilders, what hooked me and sold me on bodybuilding and why I've dedicated my entire being to bodybuilding was because I saw it the same way that Arnold saw bodybuilding. It's not just a means to an incredible physique. What you learn through the sport, learning how to build relationships with other competitors so that you're competing, but not against each other, but for something. Learning all the tenets of sets and reps and discipline. If you take that and apply it to other aspects of your life, then you'll grow there too. And through that foundation, I was able to grow emotionally and spiritually, intellectually, going from a perpetual failing student to going through and getting a college degree. It piqued my interest in other things outside the sport. So that's kind of like my background and why I am so dedicated to bodybuilding is because bodybuilding, when applied correctly, saved my life. It also taught me a lot about respecting individuals and creating relationships and forging friendships. And it taught me about honesty and integrity because you can't lie to yourself in the gym. If you're going to be a champion, you can't turn around and have a food log and lie to yourself and say you ate clean that day when you know you didn't eat clean. And it made me accountable. And it made me believe in like that path of integrity, which led me to the military and the police departments and all the other, careers I had, which I guess I had some degree of success in. And it just kind of like put it all together. And now here, almost 50 some odd years later, throughout my travels, coming up on 50 years, 47 years of being involved in the sport, I now have the opportunity to serve bodybuilding in the capacity as part of the OCB leadership team, ownership team, whatever you want to call it. We don't give ourselves titles, and to try to move the sport on the natural end forward by my teammates and I trying to present the best possible avenue of competition and ethics and integrity and fun and support as we move forward. Some things we do are misunderstood. Hopefully we cover some of those now. But that is that's kind of my full circle. And other than that, yeah, I competed a lot. I can tell you right now, I think I say this all the time when I do competitive meetings. I think I have 5 of my trophies from back in the day when I competed. I'm proud of the fact that 140, somewhere between 140, 160 shows, I lost count. I always placed. But here's the thing I always like to put in perspective with people. I've probably won 25 overall championships, probably another 20, 25, class wins. But when you look at that in perspective, I had if it was a sports team, I had a losing record. I wouldn't have been in no playoffs anywhere because I was 50%, way under 50%. When you put that much into perspective, I was like a 333 winning percentage. Man, that's a team that nobody even talking about. But because you can take so much more out of the sport and put so much more back into it, every single show is a win for any human that's competing at a high enough level. Because you always learn something about yourself. You always learn something about your fellow athletes. You always learn something. It always gives you a take back. And now doing what I'm doing with the OCB and moving it forward, we're always learning too. I mean, we're learning from our athletes. We believe in continuous process improvement. And that's why we're always changing things. I mean, if you remember a few years ago, we had restrictions on athletes. We have no restrictions anymore whatsoever. We want our athletes to go out and compete elsewhere. And you want to know why we want athletes to go out and compete elsewhere? Because if we're doing our job and we are creating a product that's worth coming back to, and we have earned your trust and we have earned your respect and we want you to come back, then we've done our job. But at the same time, we don't want to discount athletes' ability to go try other things. It's just like, I use the analogy all the time. It's like restaurants. Sometimes I want to go to Taco Bell. Sometimes I want to go to McDonald's. Sometimes I want to go Cheesecake Factory. It all depends on my mood. And competitors should have that right too. But we're not trying to best anybody in the world of bodybuilding. We're not trying to we're not trying to harm you. We're not trying to hurt anybody. We all want everybody to coexist together and flourish together and raise the bar for natural bodybuilding and give athletes that choice. We're just trying to be the best OCB we can be. And that's what motivates me now, to try to dedicate the organization. My partners are just as dedicated to do this, to bring the best product for you, because you all deserve it. You've earned it. You've earned the right for us to be bumping up that prize money to $77,000 at the Orton Cup. And hopefully, our goal is not to stop there. I mean, we have a vision of where we want to be in 5 years, and it would blow people's minds. But it's just to keep giving back and doing more, because you all are the ones that have earned that. And we got to give back. So kind of long-winded answer, but that's where I'm at now. And I think you can see my passion and where my passions lie. I've been passionate about 3 things in my life. The bodybuilding community, my Marine soldiers and airmen that I had the opportunity to lead over the years, and my community when I was a police officer. Those are my passions. And I've been lucky to have just one great career after another where I get to live in those passions.
Absolutely. So we know that you are pretty much in charge of the judging for the OCB. So
Yes.
if anybody wants to judge or whatever, they got to come through you.
Yes.
Let's just go ahead and get this right off the bat. So, because this is a question that we get or that we hear a lot of times, they say that the judging in the OCB is inconsistent.
Yes.
So do you think it's inconsistent? And if you do, why do you think it's inconsistent? Or why do you not think it's inconsistent?
Okay. So give me a second here to paint the landscape, and then
Okay.
I'm absolutely going to answer that question. And I'm absolutely going to tell the audience and the world what we are doing about it and advances that we're making. So I told you, 1979, first ever time I was exposed to bodybuilding. That day, I went and I bought an Iron Man magazine. by Perry Rader. It was back then, they were like a little thing like this. It was all about bodybuilding. And the second article in the magazine was, why is judging so inconsistent across bodybuilding? And there was a whole diatribe of why it was inconsistent. Then the second article in was by a Mr. Universe, multi-time Mr. Universe, Bill Pearl, one of my favorite bodybuilders of all time. Bill Pearl, long passed away, but he was a legend from the 50s, 60s, 70s. Preeminent judge in both IFBB, NABA, all over the place. And he went in to explain why there is this viewpoint that the judging is inconsistent. However, these are the factors that align. So it's really not inconsistent. And these are some of the factors. That was 1979. Since then, I have seen 1,000 articles, and now in social media, it's all over social media. It's true in every organization. It's true everywhere. This has been the ongoing thing. Now, have there been inconsistencies in judging across all organizations, to include at times the OCB? Yes, there are going to be. There are always going to be. And that was one of the factors that Bill Pearl tried to make initially. You think that it's hard to call a ball and a strike correctly in Major League Baseball. When it comes to any objectivity in physique, again, there's going to be nuances. Our goal, and my goal with my judges and how I train them, is to have a left and a right boundary for everything except for symmetry. So now let me break it down how we are moving forward with the OCB. When you look at judging across the board and you look at all organizations, sometimes there's not a predetermined factor. There is not a philosophical point of view of what we're looking for. This is why in some organizations, it's a more and more ripped physique. It's always more shredded. You know, that there's no difference in the shreddedness of a bikini versus a wellness versus a figure versus and other times it's size. You know, the only difference between a classic physique and a men's physique is that the enormity of the muscle mass. Okay, and it went into size. What we decided to do, and where Matt set the OCB on the path of from day one, is he always felt that symmetry was the most important aspect of it. That you need to have the right symmetry for, and at the time we started OCB, we had men's bodybuilding, women's bodybuilding, and figure. You had to have the right symmetry. Now, as we've progressed in the sport, we have added other categories. And if you think about it from a symmetrical point of view, and I want you to turn around and think of a physique, block out all details, block them out. You cannot see any detail. It's a silhouette. The silhouette of a bodybuilder and a classic physique competitor can be somewhat the same, but a bodybuilder can always have a few blockiness issues, a few imbalances. So if you see a picture of a bodybuilder, the slightly thicker waist and, slightly out of proportions, and you see that silhouette, you'll go bodybuilder. If you see a perfectly flowing silhouette with biceps matching calves and a small waist and wide shoulders and cap deltoids and that whole just beautiful flowing silhouette, just a silhouette, no muscle details in there, you're going to go classic physique. You see that wide shoulder, small waist, you're going to go men's physique. The same is true for the women's categories. You'd be able to look at a silhouette and go, lower body dominant but muscular. Wellness, streamlined athletic, nice S curve, bikini. You can go all the way through there. So that's how we train our judges. Now, both of you are trained judges, so you know that, this is how we train. We go through about 3 hours of this, and then you go out and you test judge and you come back and boom. So that's how we do it first and foremost. So as long as I look at the product that's winning on stage and I go, that meets the symmetrical ideal of what we're looking for, then we're in the right ballpark. Where we're continuously trying to narrow it in and define and to give judges a more exact criteria comes with the level of definition. Because right now we have a left and right boundary for everything. We have you can't be any softer than, and you can't be any harder than. Now we do that because, as you know, when you go to amateur competitions, there are a lot of competitors that aren't ready to be champions. They're not ready for the Yorton Cup. They're not ready to be out there and to be the best of the best. So you got to kind of give a left and right boundary. Otherwise, you're going to go back to just having the most ripped person winning all the time. So you got to adhere to that symmetrical standard. And then you got to have that clearly defined left and right boundary. And because we have a little bit of that left and right boundary, people will look at a photograph of just a winner, just the person who won, and go, that's too defined for classic physique. The judges don't know what they're talking about. What I do, and you know this because you're both judges, I get every single event's tabulation sheets. I go through every single show. I evaluate every single judge, and I score them based on the final outcome. I then go in and will look at the live streams or the photos from the show, as many as I can get, and I look to see what was on that stage. And sometimes we end up with a situation where, because a men's classic physique competitor had the most incredible symmetry of the show and nobody else even came close, but he was too far over the line of definition, we're still awarding symmetry because we're not going to give it to a lesser physique, whether it's bikini, men's classic physique, but we're not going to give it to a lesser physique. You have to meet that perfect symmetry. We have to be able to black out that silhouette and go, perfect. That's it. And if nobody comes close, you can end up with a situation where somebody's over or under that line. Fortunately for us, it doesn't happen very often because we have the two categories or three categories that things like this happen the most in, and we'll probably talk about them the most, is classic physique, bikini, and wellness. They're the newest. They're the hardest to clarify. And they're what I spend the most amount of my time trying to find the proper language and photo boards to articulate what we're looking for the judges training. Okay, so they're the most difficult. But because we're getting so many bikini competitors, it doesn't happen very often. Because we're getting so many men's classic physique competitors, it doesn't happen very often. So that's kind of where we're at now. So our job now is to further and better define for our judges what we're looking for. Now, here's the other things that we're doing with the OCB. As you know, I host coaches clinics. So any coach that is listening to this today, email me, because I will, as soon as I get a small group together, have a coaches clinic. Now, what do we do in the coaches clinic? The same 3 hours that we do on the judging, minus some of the final nuances and going into a final exam, because I don't think I need to give a coach a comprehensive exam where they have to differentiate physiques and some trick questions in there. If you take the exam, you're going to have a few physiques that you go, man, I don't know if that's a bodybuilder or a men's classic physique competitor. That's what I want. I want judges to learn differentiation and fine tuning. And there's no wrong answer there. I want the thought process carried out. And then I have some clear cut ones where, obviously, if you tell me the bikini girl's a wellness competitor, then we're going to have to go back into retraining. But they don't have to do that. But they're going to go in through, and they're going to have all that. So if I can train the coaches to the same standard as the judges and bring them all together, the athlete is the one that's going to have the best possible experience. It also puts the coach and the athlete on the same basis of knowledge as the judge, so they can have a dialogue and better differentiate where the shortcomings were. Okay. Again, not a perfect system, not a perfect world. And in Bill Pearl's article, when he summed it up, he said there are always going to be variances. There's always going to be differentiation. And unless you have AI judging you, and I don't know about you all, but I don't want AI judging me on stage. I want humans judging me on stage. I don't want some computer figuring out
Sully,
what I need to look like.
I don't know, man.
You say that now. What are you going to say in a year or two?
Well, I think you said something in that, and it actually took me to one of my points. So I want to, I guess, kind of move away from that. But once again, I want to shout out, if you guys haven't listened to, I think it's episode 27 of the Zen of Bodybuilding, please go give that a listen, because there may be things that Sully has spoke on that we may not reach in this episode. So please go give that a listen if you can, or whenever you're available to do that. But the one thing I heard, and it segued me into my point, was you said that amateurs, there's certain amateurs that aren't ready to be champions, but they still may be crowned. Someone still has to get awarded when you meet the criteria of turning pro, right? And that also takes me to a lot of people, especially at the Yorton. They say that, of course, we look at it as it's our prestigious title. It's a big title, right? And I know there's some pros that's frustrated that, all right, why do I have to qualify? But then a new, fresh pro can just walk in and compete at the Yorton. So there's mixed feelings about it, right, for a lot of athletes. So I just would want to hear, I guess, the mindset of, all right, awarding all amateurs or new pros the ticket to go there, as to a pro having to compete against a pro.
Right. So what we do in the OCB, just for clarification, in the OCB is if you earn your pro qualification the weekend after a Yorton Cup, all the way up to the weekend before the next Yorton Cup, then you can go directly to the big dance. This was done a lot of ways. It mirrors what happened back in the old NPC IFBB days, where you had to qualify for the Olympia, but if you earned your pro card that year, you could also go to the Olympia. And even though we're not the same federations, we're not doing things the same way, the thought process behind that was actually quite sound. And this is why we do it. And it is because there are a lot of competitors who compete, who know, they deep down in their heart of hearts, they know, I'm not going to beat a Jamal or an Eric or a Magnum or go through all the female champions as well, Callie and on down the line. I'm probably not going to get there. But I want to experience this thing that is the Yorton Cup. So we wanted to do with the Yorton Cup is twofold. Is we wanted to not make it only the best and most prestigious title in natural bodybuilding, which we're trying to do. We want to make it an extra special experience for competitors. We want to give them something where they can go in and get $107 worth of bling. And you guys know we give a lot of bling away at the Yorton Cup. And if you want bling, come to the 20th anniversary, because there's going to be even more stuff given out. So we go all out of our way there. We try to put together the best possible stage with the best possible lighting, so that when you get your photos, you have the ultimate experience with what your photographs are. We try to give them the ultimate time hanging out, intermingling with, and being part of the greatest athletes in the world. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity for most people. And we don't want to rob them of that, because we have a lot of people who come to the Yorton Cup, who qualified for pro status, who do one pro show in their career, the Yorton Cup, and they went, man, that was epic. That checks off a box. I'm going to go into grow mode for a while, and maybe I come back, maybe I don't, but it gives them that opportunity. So for us, the Yorton Cup is kind of like a two-pronged thing. The ultimate championship for the ultimate athletes, and the ultimate experience for a natural pro athlete to be part of. So this is why we always temper it when we send our email traffic out, because we try to communicate a lot with our competitors coming in, a lot. And we try to temper that expectation with not everybody can win, but you're going to be part of history. There's 235 athletes. Next year, we'll probably have 250, because now we're going to have, Canada and England and Australia and Brazil, and I lost track. We have other international affiliates coming in, and it's just going to keep getting bigger. And you're going to be part of that great weekend. And it's the experience that we want to provide our athletes with, as well as allowing the best of the best possible experience. Now, the one thing we're going to have to look at in the long run is, like, where do you draw the line? 500 competitors, 1,000 competitors. This is all stuff we're going to revisit. And the one thing that we do in the OCB, for anybody listening to this, on anything that we talk about, we try to be the most approachable people possible. You got an idea, email it to me. Stop me at a show, talk to me, call me up on the phone, hit me up, IM me, do something to get in contact with me, because I am constantly doing follow-up feedback with athletes. We want to know, please don't tell us what we do right. Tell us what we can do to improve, but don't turn around and say, so you suck, your judges suck. Okay. Give it to me like how, and provide a suggestion. And if you have a suggestion, please give it the litmus test of, is it feasible? Is it fair? And is it legal? Because if it's feasible, fair, and legal, we're going to talk about it, and we may implement it. And this is where a lot of our suggestions come through us, because we're not infallible. We don't always make the best decisions or the best ideas. We're like any leadership group. And we sit there, and as a leadership group, because we are a leadership group, we're not just a bunch of muscleheads that go, hey, have federation. We all have leadership experience in some area. And we sit down and we look at the tactical, the operational, and the strategic aspects of every decision that comes in. whether it's adding a show, adding a country, changing a requirement. Do we shift away from judging symmetry predominantly? Do we go towards definition? It's always going to be a continuous process improvement. From adding a new category, which I can never see us doing again. I think we're at our limit, to changing all of this stuff, but it's got to come from you all. You all. Now, you've all been through my judging. And through my Wednesday pre-meeting syncs that I do with judges and promoters and key staff every Wednesday before every event. Everybody's got to be on there to get on the same mindset. What is my number one slide? My little pyramid, right? That little pyramid. You guys have seen my little pyramid slide with the competitors in the middle and everybody pulling together. That's the foundation. That's the foundation. So we need that the people in that pyramid, the competitors, the people who it's all about, occasionally to bounce back these ideas to us. What can we do to make it better for you? What do you want to see? What do you want to see? And if we have a reason that we can't do that, I will let you know. I mean, you got to be transparent as an organization. You got to be transparent. You got to own your errors, and you got to be willing to adjust with the demand. And those are all things that we are ready, willing, and able to execute at any given time.
Absolutely. Just to piggyback off of what Eric said, I want to go into the off-season random urine testing, right? So
Yes.
let's say you got Chesapeake coming up, right? Let's say an amateur competes at Chesapeake, he gets his pro card. He automatically qualifies for York next year. All right. So this guy potentially has a whole year off without getting random drug tested. So how are y'all as an organization making sure these amateurs are not flying under the radar and getting randomly drug tested throughout the year? Because like everybody know who I am, who Eric is, who Magnum is. So if we walk into a show and y'all randomize, it's like, oh, no big deal. They're like, but if an amateur walk into a show, a new pro walk into a show, y'all really have no idea who that person is. And they could be potentially cycling, in their off season.
Right. Got to be careful on this one because random urinalysis testing needs to be random. Okay. It can't be selective. You can't, by law, you can't turn around and go, you. It does appear that way because I think both of you at different times have showed up to judge at shows, party shows. We get to tap you on the back and go, guess what? You're random. It's random because we look at who's going to be at that show. There is, four OCD pros are going to be at that show. You spin the wheel and you go, bang, that one. All right. Hey, cool. Bang. Now, one of the things that we're doing, and I think you saw it last year, you saw it this year, every year we're investing more and more and more into random urinalysis testing to include at the Jordan Cup this year. We tested 57 athletes this year for a cost of over $70,000 just on our urinalysis testing. And a lot of the people that we picked were people that were kind of newer pros or pros that wouldn't normally get, randomly urinalysis tested, still done randomly because you can look and go, all right, here are 10 numbers, and we're going to pick one out of these 10 numbers. They've never gone through, this type of stringent urinalysis testing before. Grab one, boom. But you're talking about random on the day of the show. You're not talking about random 6 months out from a show. So what can we do to improve that? I'm going to be honest with you. We've talked about increasing the amount of money that's going into our drug testing this year, but we haven't really sat down and said, hey, for 2025, how can we go about better applying that? You just gave me a suggestion on what we can do to get the names and numbers of the people that we can now look at for a pool to more randomize. Brand new pros who have never competed, who are probably going to go to the Yorton Cup at 6 months out. So there, I told you, we go by suggestions. Wherever that idea or whatever that thought came from or whatever that question came from has now planted a seed in my head. So as we move forward, that's now a correction we can make. So when we stick our extra $50,000 into more random urinalysis testing this offseason, we now got a whole new pool of people to pick on instead of just, hey, Eric and Jamal with Magnum showed up at a show to judge. All right, we got 3 there. That's one of the 3. Spin the wheel. Hey, it's Magnum again. Nope. Now we've got a whole new way of doing business. The other thing that we're going to be doing with them is less of the, hey, you show up at a show and we know you're coming. and more of the, you get a letter in the mail, you're now going to have to go to X laboratory. You have, X number of hours to get there, blah, blah, blah. Which is the way they kind of like they do it in the NFL and they do it in Major League Baseball. You get a letter in the mail or a guy shows up on your doorstep and says, hey, pee here. Logistics and stuff like that. We're still trying to work out our best way to do that and move forward. And, like what's our pathway there? So that's something that's also going to be implemented more rolling into next year. And this is just something else that we can bring into the mix. So when we have our winter meeting, because remember, the off season in the OCB is about 3 weeks long. I mean, we get shows in December, we get shows in January. It's like, Jesus.
Yeah.
So we slide a meeting in there and then we come up with, hey, this is new for 2025. And then we implement. So exactly what you just talked to, what you brought up, Jamal, I think that gives us a really good indication of where we need to invest more as we move forward. So anybody out there that's listening to this, that's going to be winning your pro card this year and just thinking it got you going to the Jordan Cup. Yeah. Yeah. I might be taking a road trip, knocking on your door. Here's your cup. What do you want? All right. But no, that's a good one. That is actually a good implementable, feasible suggestion. This is what we talk about. This is something we can do to fix that gap. I like it.
All right. So the one thing that we did a Jordan Cup recap, and we still plan on doing an end of the year recap. And one thing that I pointed out on our Jordan recap was the call outs, and you explained them on your podcast as well. And
yes,
I'll kind of speak on it from an athlete standpoint. Like, I spoke very highly of it because, one, it's entertaining. Like, you get a closer look. And I don't want to say the fluff, but you get rid of extra body so people can zero in, especially people who's new to bodybuilding. They have less to look at. They're more in tune. And then you also are able to bring people on. And it's kind of like, I ain't going to say musical chairs, but it's exciting when you see your athlete coming on stage and literally it's a literal battle between 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, however many it is, besides them battling against 12 or 8. And people really don't know what you're looking at, right? And even the call outs, people still may not know the comparison or what placings those are, but it's also a smaller playing field and you at least know who you're battling against. So can you give a quick, I guess, your thought process on why you shifted to do that at the 2024? And I know you say you're going to continue it, but how would you improve on that going into next year?
Yeah, great question. This year we only did it for bodybuilding and for classic physique. And it was, I'll be 100% honest with you, it was kind of like on a whim. This was not pre-planned. This was not premeditated on my point at all. But what happened is when we brought the bodybuilding class out, all right, so we have 9 incredible physiques up there. The stage was too small. I mean, it's a big stage. The Jordan Cup's not a small venue, but it got small real quick. And the one thing I do when I train my judges, I train my head judge, is ensure that you're not turning people until you have 1 second to view each physique. So when I train a judge, I always say, if you're at 9 across the board, you should be holding that segment there for 9 seconds. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, because it takes about a second to look at each physique and assess it on the way down the line. But then you have to keep them moving. And what happens if you want to look at this person and this person? Now you need 18, but it just gets it got too messy. And so that's when I said, you know what, we got to do something, boom, boom, and started pulling people out. Now, the other thing I didn't want to do is there's an organization that does this. It's their bread and butter. It's their bread and butter. And I applaud them. I love them. I love the YouTube videos. I watch them too. I think it's great. But it's done in a specific order by their culture. And their culture is first call out, and whoever's in the middle is basically the person to look at. As a head judge, I go to enormous lengths. I train all my head judges to do the same thing. Never, ever, ever try to send a subliminal message to the judging panel for a free preemptive strike. I want them to differentiate. I want them to think. Even if ultimately I think they were wrong in their decision, I want the process done. I want it done that way. So I started thinking, how can I do this? And I'm like, all right, let me pull out the 3 class winners, and then the 3 people who came in second. And then let me put, the third place people with some second place people, whatever. I was trying to come up with a system in my head so that nobody got overlooked. Because another thing that happens in a situation like this is you may think that I already know who my top three are, and you have a tendency to overlook people in the wings. So I wanted everybody to have an opportunity to come up and go around with everybody to see if the cream rose to the crop. And then after I did that for, 3 or 4 rotations around, then I started getting the judges handing me sheets down of who they wanted to see together. Now, every now and then in a category in both bodybuilding and in classic physique, I would notice that, in my opinion, again, just my opinion, there'd be a number there that would not be on the majority who they wanted to see, that I'd be thinking to myself, that's somebody I have in the top 3. I'm going to put them in the top 3 to see what they have to say. And I would see some movement around there, but that was the only suggestivity that I would put in there to make sure nobody was overlooked. Ultimately, because as a head judge at the Jordan Cup, I am non-voting. No head judge at the Jordan Cup is a voting judge. You are there for movement, for dialogue, for commentary, and to assist the other judges. You are not voting judge. But ultimately, I wanted them to try to come up with their own ideal on that. So that's how we did both those classes. And I ultimately didn't do it for the other categories. But the more I started thinking about it, the more I started thinking, how can we take this system and utilize it, not the way that the other federation does and not doing it their way, but the same way, so nobody's overlooked, and that we can make smaller manageable groups so that we can get the cream to rise to the crop. So that's the first thing we're working on. I'm still working the kinks out of it. If you guys have me on in 6 months, I can tell you exactly how we're going to do it at major pro shows and the Jordan Cup moving forward, because by then I'll have all the kinks worked out of it. Anybody listen to this, if you got ideas, a judge, competitor, whatever, shoot them towards me, because we want to make it fair. The one thing I will not do in any circumstance is pull who we think the top 3 are and pull them out as a first call. Will not happen. Now, did we do that, in the cycle of events? Yeah, but it didn't happen that way. It happened where, like in both bodybuilding, well, bodybuilding was a little bit different, where it was more, you were looking for, you're like your top 5 people kept shifting around. Everything else was, I don't know, bodybuilding was kind of like, there was a known commodity that, everyone, okay, cool. And it was more about all the other placements. Okay. Where classic physique was totally different, where, the top 4 people had first place votes, rightfully so. And that became more of a battle where we'd have, like these guys and these guys, like that top 5 was like phenomenal. We ran into the same thing with bikini, and also with figure, some of the other classes. Now, how do you make that better? So bikini was another question. And when I watched your podcast the other day, they were like, why are you pulling top 3 here and top 2 here and top 1 there, where the 3 best could be in a single category? Well, that's why we pull the top 3 out of a class of 3, the top 2 out of a class of, 4 classes, and so on down the line. So how could we make that work better? And that we're going to fix. So first, answer the first question, how we rotate those people through. We are going to come up with a systematic approach on that so that I can train head judges on it. I'm not going to train the world. I'm just going to say, here's the philosophy, but the head judges will be trained on it so they can execute it so that it makes more sense. Okay. So it's a little less haphazard as me doing it and trying to think on the fly to figure it out as we went along. Great idea. We're going to keep doing it. People loved it, but we have to do it consistently across all categories. Need to be done the same way. So now what we're going to implement is we're going to use bikini, because there were 8 classes of bikini, and we only took the winners. So we ended up with the top 8. How can we do a bikini? Well, bikini, when you end up with that many classes, is we're going to say, let's say we end up with next year with 6 classes of men's classic physique. So since I got a classic physique guy on here and a men's physique, let's say we end up with 6 classes of each of those. What we're going to do is we're going to take 3 classes, judge them beginning to end, posing routines, awards, everything. We're going to take the top 3 out of those 3 classes. So we're back to 9 again, manageable number, and do that. And then come up with your top 3. Then have those cats go sit out back and hang out. Everybody else is dismissed. Then we bring out the next group of 3 classes, do the exact same thing, and then come up with the top 3 there. And then we bring a top 6 out. So for bikini with 8 classes, we would do that. Now we're going to end up with 12 competitors out of the 4 when we do the top 3 thing, which is going to be a little difficult. So we're going to have to do that, manage them in and out, come up with the top 3 overall, and then do it with the second thing for the top 3 overall, and then the top 6 overall compete for the money. This way, nobody gets overlooked when you start getting into those larger categories, because I know that was a consideration of mine with the bikini. You're pulling out the top 1, and you had some classes where the top 2 were absolutely fantastic and probably could have been in the top 3. How do you handle that without having 60 people up there to make it more manageable? So that's how we're going to do it moving forward. The other thing is with the Jordan Cup now being a 2-day event, time is now back on our side. Where last year we had 200 and something competitors and we're trying to cram all them categories. Time was not on our side. Time was not, I mean, you got to end the show sometime, and nobody wants to be there till 1 p.m. But now we split up that way. Now time is on our side, and we can do that and get to when we split those big categories that have 6, 8, 10 classes in them, and we split those, we can stick to the principle of top 3 move forward. And then out of group A, you get a top 3. Now, those groups are not going to get individual awards or prize money or that stuff. They're just earning the right to battle for the top 3, if you understand what I mean. So going back when you have that first group of 3 men's physique categories, we get a top 3. You're not going to get a separate cash prize. You're not going to get another award. That's going to be okay. And then we do it again, and then those top 6. So you'll still be a class winner, wherever you placed. And then when you get to that end point and you get to that top 6, or with 8 classes, top 8, you already know off the top of the bat, I was top 6, I was top 8. You already know by the end of the show where you were. You reached that elite level. But that's how we're doing it moving forward. I think it's going to work better that way. Nobody gets overlooked if you're not in, like one of those cutoffs. We're just taking 1, out of this many classes, or 2 out of this many, or 3. You get that top 3 overview, so you always know that the best 3 athletes move forward. And we add a little bit more fun to, those comparisons where you're pulling people out in those smaller groups to be, to really, really be identified. And again, like I said, we'll be pulling in, people that place 3rd in a class might get pulled in with the top 2 in that class, just to get another look. Just give it a good look. Take your time, get it right, and see how these people jostle positions. Because for some people, you end up in, the top 9 of bodybuilding. It's just as important to be 7th overall as it is to be 2nd or 1st overall, because it's important for them. They know going in that they're probably not going to be in the top 3, but they don't want to be, in the bottom 2. And they want to know, and they want to have that opportunity to battle their way up. So everybody counts. All the way from 1st to last place, everybody counts. And we got to give them the time they deserve.
Absolutely. Maybe this is a selfish question, but as you was talking, I was, stuff was just running through my head. So you said as a head judge, you're not scoring, you're just moving people around. So to me, I think the head judge is the most experienced person on that panel. So if you see something that's not right, or if the judging is off and you think, someone else should be elsewhere, is there like a chance, or had this ever happened where like y'all took a recess and y'all went into like a judge's chamber and you like, hey, like, what are y'all doing? Like, anything like that ever happened? Or
It hasn't happened. I've never in the heat of the moment, you don't know how the scores are coming out. You know what I'm saying? Because here I am
yeah.
as the head judge. I'm not reviewing, who Judge 7 has in a certain position or who Judge 1 has the certain position. I'm trying to flow and organize to get everybody looked at. As long as my judges have gone to the Wednesday pre-event sync meeting and we have reiterated, criteria for each category and broken it down to symmetry component, definition component, size component, overall look and all that, and they adhere to it strongly. And also remember, for the Jordan Cup, to be selected to judge for the Jordan Cup, you are graded each year. Like I said, I get all those tabulation sheets. You are graded, and you have to judge a minimum of 5 times in 18 months, and you have to attain a 90% or better overall score in your final placements with the panel. in order to be selected to be put into the pool to judge. So taking all that into consideration, my hope is always that we've already put the right people in place. And you might have a situation where you have a class that is so freaking competitive, and you have so many people that meet the symmetry component, and you have so many people that are in the left and right boundaries of what we're looking for size and definition, that it becomes difficult for them, and you have those first place votes sprinkled across a wider field. I would expect that. If we had just a single stratagem, look for the most defined guy or girl in every category, it'd be a lot easier because you just look for the most ripped carcass up there, bang, win. And then, 7 for 7 first place votes. But I like the differentiation aspect of it because there's 3 aspects for physique. OCB has added categories based on symmetry. That's why we added a new category. That's why we added wellness. Wellness wasn't added because, we wanted to add another category for a money grab. Wellness was added because there are women who will never get streamlined enough for bikini, will never get wide enough for figure, will never put the mass onto their arms that they need for women's physique, that will always be lower body dominant, more muscular and more densely developed than a bikini competitor. So we added a category. That's a symmetry thing. Each category we added has a specific symmetry. And then, more clearly defined and going in there. But exactly what you brought up, Jamal, I haven't. However, it does beg the question of, should we